1. Our story starts with a freshly brewed cup of coffee from my wonderful personal coffee maker in my office. I like to enjoy coffee in the morning, as it makes issues like the following slightly easier to bear. Before I get to even doctor my beverage, my cell phone text alert goes off. The message on it reads simply, "Help," in capital letters. After working with my colleagues for a few years now, I know that trying to do a back and forth or calling about the issue will only waste time. Their desk is only about 30 steps away from my office anyway, so once more into the breach I go. I arrive at said desk and ask what is wrong. I can clearly see his monitor and the current phishing email training video on it. The following happens.
Hey Og, the training is broken. I've restarted it several times and it keeps freezing on this screen. There isn't a next button and I don't know what to do.
As he's talking, I look at the screen again and take stock of what is actually there. I see that it is the section that states to click the icon above that represents your email platform. It has a few icons on it for Outlook, Gmail, and 365. So I of course give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, let me see what is wrong. Here I take his mouse and click on the Outlook button. It then goes on to the next part of the training.
Oh, Og, you fixed it. What did you do?
I clicked on the icon it asks me to.
Oh.
I could tell he was a little ashamed, so I just reassured him and went on my way. Now, a strange thing happens when I leave my office. People magically have been looking for me and need my help. Like they can't find my office, because, of course, I have made it unplottable and told no one about it. So I'm inevitably flagged down the moment I turn away from the first desk. I momentarily contemplate ignoring said hail, and proceed back to my lair where my coffee is slowly losing heat. I plaster on the customer service face and head over. You know where this is going. Same issue. It seems that there was a mass email sent out to remind people they still need to do this training. So there are bunches of people who are watching the video training and a bunch are getting stuck on the part where it literally tells them to click on the icon. I have to walk around to 5 different desks, one after the other. By desk 3, I have started looking at the screen, then just say, "Have you read what it says yet?" I swear I say it nicely, or as nice as can feasibly uttered while your eye is twitching. They then finally look at the screen and read it. No, it doesn't even stop there. Later on, I was at another office that I admin, regaling a colleague that is somewhat tech-savvy with this story. Having a good laugh after the fact that apparently our colleagues can't read. While we're chatting, someone close by calls for him, as he is their go-to when I'm not there. I'm busy doing some updates and installs on a different computer, so I turn back to it and continue on. When I glance over at the pair and the computer between them, guess what I see? Quantum mechanics and the uses therein. Of course not. Wishful thinking. It is the fated training screen once again begging for the user to simply click on the icon to progress. The funny cartoon teacher seems to have lost its glimmer, and the smile on the face looks about 1,000 times less genuine for some reason. Must have been a trick of the light. After he is told to click the icon, and colleague 1 is coming back over to me, I ask if that was the exact issue we were just talking about. A bit more exasperated than I should have been. To which he throws up his hands and says, "I'm not throwing anyone under the bus." Fair enough. This does, however, make me wonder if the training was perhaps a bit too advanced for our users. I mean, there wasn't pretty colors or flashing lights accompanying a request or anything. 2. So I recently left an MSP that I worked for about 2 years. When I first started, I learned that we had recently picked up a client with about 500 users and computers and 6 sites. None too crazy by itself, but we did not have much documentation on them. Turns out we picked them up as a client about 2 months prior, but only heard that the guy was leaving the company a week before he did. Note that he had worked there for 30 years before then. Originally, we were just going to be handling backups, AV patching, and granting said IT guy RMM access. Now all of a sudden we were faced with covering all their IT needs and knew very little about their setup. Here's a brief summary of what we discovered after we left to a land of no connectivity. He did not provide us with credentials to their switches and firewalls. Turns out they're owned by the company, but managed by the ISP, who also handles their phones. We were told about 3 VM file servers, 3 terminal servers, and 2 DCs, all on one VM host, with one other VM host for redundancy. Turns out there was something like 11 physical servers, 9 DCs, 7 file servers, 12 terminal servers, and a scattering of other servers that we didn't know shit about. Something like 65 to 80 server instances in total. Every site had various chunks of old equipment, like ancient scanners for proprietary film, and software running on domain-joined Windows 2000 and XP machines for looking up instances of documents among their literal tons of physical paperwork. Faxing was handled by SPA devices living in extremely weird places, including above ceiling tiles, in kitchen cabinets, in users' desks, and in various closets by themselves. Various users ran XP VMs with DOS emulators, which accessed domain file shares, which were all SMB 1.0 with anonymous access to literally everything. Everyday user work was typically done through 3 separate apps, all of which had inter-database communication. Those 3 apps operated off 7 different servers and tied into 2 cloud services. No explanation was given as to how they tied together. I was only able to patch together the interconnects by observing network traffic. User passwords were all 6-digit lowercase with 1 number at the end, and saved in an unencrypted XLS file accessible on the public SMB 1.0 file shares. Try saying that 10 times fast. Oh, and domain users was a member of domain admins. The servers I listed above did not include the 20 server 2003 instances that we shut down. The servers I listed above did not include 40 other VMs that did seemingly nothing. The conclusion we reached was he built a VM for every task, and if he messed it up along the way, he just built another one and left the originals running. Windows, Office, and Adobe licensing was all done through the cheapest routes possible. Example, third-party Chinese websites. These license keys were stored in Word docs alongside the installers, typically on the desktop of a user's sign-in on a workstation. About a week after I started, those licenses started expiring. The business owner was not happy to hear that he'd have to buy more licenses. We were told about 2 domains. Turns out there were about 15. Most just weren't actively used. Several of those other domains operated on servers that ran DHCP on the same VLAN as everything else. To get around this, he simply set every user's workstation to have a static IP with static DNS. Oh, and the ISP ran DHCP at those other sites too. After consolidating data, they ended up having about 10 terabytes of unique data. Before this, there was a grand total of a little over 100 terabytes living across the various servers. Apparently, in years past, he would drive between sites with a hard drive to update files between sites. Since the ISP managed the switches, they basically just handed off trunk ports to them. Some of the ports on the switches were configured as access to VLANs, designated for other businesses. At one point, a user's workstation got a weird IP after they moved it. Turns out he could see the neighboring business's computers. Later network scans I ran indicated that there were devices, including printers, not on premise, which could be seen. They vanished after we replaced the switches. The domain admin password was the name of the business, in all lowercase, followed by the year of its founding. Drive mappings were all done manually by our IP. Users didn't know how to do this. He would do it in person when driving on site. Cable runs in each building were from the switches to the workstations mail to mail. No wall jacks or patch panels. Many unused cables were crimped as rollover or crossover. Several server racks weren't actually secured to anything. Found that out the hard way when pushing a cable into a switch port almost knocked the whole fucking thing over. The battery backups for the servers were all long dead. He somehow got them to not beep and not turn themselves off by doing some solder work within them. There was something like 20 other undocumented applications that specific users only had to use once every like 2 years or so, and we only learned of those over time. Sometimes it'd be a user saying that the workstation they pulled out of a basement cabinet drawer wouldn't boot, and it'd be a Windows 95 machine running software that could only be found on floppy disks dug out of the file cabinets. Other times, it'd be something that used to run on servers that he'd boot up only when the servers needed it. Some of those he literally kept at his house. I was put in charge of figuring out and fixing all of it. Mind you, I was new to Windows domain environments, so this amounted to taking pretty much the worst example of a network possible, reverse engineering it, reducing that picture down to what it needed to do, and improving it to modern standards. Ones that I hadn't even learned yet. I was not allowed to impose downtime even after hours. Finally, just as icing on the cake, I was also basically the main person supporting them. And across the entire company, there was only one user who could distinguish cable shapes by description, who left partway through the year. None of the users really knew what they needed on a day-to-day basis. They relied on the IT guy to do almost everything. Whether it was plugging mice, keyboards in, changing the printer to print to, not the default printer, just the choice of it, or how to use the applications their job roles relied on. There wasn't a week I worked there where I didn't answer at least 2 calls from users asking how to do something in some app made just for their company. I gathered more information by periodically analyzing data pulled with GetNet TCP connection, GetProcess and Wireshark than I did from talking to users. The only exceptions to this were those weird things that got pulled out once every few years. Towards the end of my time there, the guy actually came back into town and provided us his extended notes. He wrote them down while he was on a plane to Malaysia, but didn't think to send them over on any of the days where he got internet access. Those notes covered everything that I had already found out. Needless to say, it was a point of great anxiety and contributed to me leaving said MSP. There were other reasons for me leaving, but that one moment contributed. A lot. 3. I was at the beginning of my career as a developer intern at a local IT company. I was still attending university classes. The agreement was that I would be working 6 hours a week. We were creating a web application with a central user management system. We could use the same credentials for the different modules. This meant a metric ton of users created for testing, and it was the same dataset as the client's demo accounts, with live email addresses. The company hired 4 other interns like me, 1 senior developer, and 1 part-time developer. No architect, nobody to design the architecture. The project was not on a tight budget, yet they wanted to save money on everything. They wanted to use the internal framework that was supposed to make things easier. Spoilers, it made our lives a nightmare, but the order was to use that. We had no say in it. We tried to warn the boss that this whole project was going to be a nightmare, but he simply ignored us at those rare times when he was at the office. We'd been missing deadlines every time, nothing was working properly, the system was slow. A logical response from the company was to make us do overtime. We were working 10 hours a day while studying for classes, preparing for end-of-term exams. The remaining time we were trying to socialize, family, girlfriend, etc. It soon turned out that we would need to put much more effort into the project than the company intended to. The framework had tons of bugs, every release was a nightmare. 12-hour workdays became regular, one of the interns 270 hours of work in a month. We were paid by the hour, at least we were compensated in a way. The test user database had been used by the client for demo purposes. It had their live email addresses with proper group memberships. Every action made in the app sent an email to a group that was eventually sent out to our client as well. They couldn't just simply ignore that. That was around 10 emails a day. After a year, I was at the end of my university years, and it slipped out of my mouth that I don't feel inclined to support this big pile of bug. The boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that they were not satisfied with my performance, and they won't offer me a full-time position after I graduate. This was the point where I snapped. They gave me an option to either get my shit together or leave. I have noticed that the email service was not working on the test environment, yet it was scheduled. This means that the email has been put in the queue but not delivered. I have mentioned this to the senior developer, but he ignored me like I was the idiot who's not going to be there anyway. I was sitting there like I should care, I admit. I even got upset about this. Then it hit me. I will just let them do what they want. Once the service is fixed, it will explode eventually. Once I had my degree in hand, I left the company. The other interns also got their degree, but they were offered a full-time position. One of them left 3 weeks after me leaving. They insisted to a probation period for him, but didn't expect him to actually leave. He did. Another guy left around 2 months after that. Here comes the best part. They have fixed the email service after a month. In 1 hour, around 400,000 emails were sent to every user in the system. The mail server could handle the load, but the client had to sort these one by one. They threatened the team with contacting the CEO. The team already had a bad reputation because of the missed deadline. Somehow they managed to push the app live. The requirement said that 500 concurrent users should be properly handled by the server the client had already paid for, but it couldn't keep up with the load. The company had to buy around 200 gigabytes of RAM. They've run out of budget way before the initial live release. The company had to pay more in terms of hardware and penalty than the original budget was. After leaving the company, I got a full-time job with a fraction of stress and a more employee-friendly environment. 4. I work for a sysadmin for my county. I started this job not too long ago and haven't been around to every location, so I may have news stories under my belt before too long. Today's story is about one of my users in an admin position. Today this user called me and alerted me to them having issues with their setup. For most of the county, our users are using big-name brand laptops, hooked up to a fancy little dock station with 2 DisplayPort monitors that are also from big-name brand. It's actually a sweet setup and allows users to easily work from home because they can just disconnect the laptop and be on their way. The user told me that their laptop would randomly freeze up, the dock would turn off, and their displays would go to sleep. No big deal, I thought. Maybe there's a firmware update that needs to be pushed through, and hopefully it fixes the problem. Or we just need to swap cables out, or just restart the machine. Nothing major, I assumed. So I go on a nice brisk walk over there from our department and greet the user, who shows me the problem. I note that they actually describe said problem in full detail. Yay! I immediately go to restart the machine first. It goes down and comes back up fine, and it seems to be working fine. During this period, the user and I are talking about our day and what we did over the weekend when it suddenly hits the fritz again and wigs out in front of me. At this point, it definitely seems to be behaving like an issue with power going to the dock, or the dock itself. I ask her to let me back into her area where it's plugged into, and she shows me. This is where the horror began. Her dock and monitors were plugged into ye olde beige surge protector. For the sake of this, we'll call it Surge Protector 1. The warm orange light indicating its function was not on, so I traced the cord to a small compartment area right under the side of her desk, behind the drawer. Inside this compartment was another surge protector. You may already have your hands approaching your face, but there's more. I noticed there's another multi-pack surge protector, number 3, under there too, that is also connected to Surge Protector 2. Surge Protector 3's main job was to connect the power from the printer that's right above it. Yes, I too have no idea why this is needed. The power cord was obviously long enough to connect to Surge Protector 2. In an effort to undo this mess, I decided to trace Surge Protector 2's cord and see where the heck that's going. There's lots of shelving in this office where the cables are routed behind. Well, it turns out Surge Protector 2 is connected to an extension cord. Now, I am by no means an electrical engineer, but not only am I sure that connecting 2 surge protectors together is a bad idea, let alone 3, I am pretty sure you're not supposed to use an extension cord or a surge protector either. Alas, as I am wrapping my head around this, I continue my search for where this journey ends. I end up moving a couple of shelves to find a horrific conclusion. Surge Protector 2's extension cord is plugged into another frickin' surge protector. That's 4! At this point, my feeble brain is trying to piece together this monstrosity of a system. and trying to clean it up to the best of my ability. I removed Surge Protector 3 from the equation entirely, along with Surge Protector 4, as the extension cord could easily make it to the outlet that Surge Protector 4 was connected to. However, due to cord lengths, desk orientation, etc., I was only able to configure it so: Surge Protector 1 to Surge Protector 2 to extension cord outlet. This still made me uncomfortable, and I requested the user to notify facilities immediately to get new outlets installed in her office and to notify me when they do. In the meantime, she said she'd happily work off just her laptop and a charger connected directly to the outlet in the meantime. 5. We recently had an employee transfer from our least technically apt department to a slightly more technically apt department. This always results in an annoying few days for me because our managers firmly believe that the T in IT stands for trainer. They give their new hires a super broad overview of what to do, and when they can't figure it out, the managers tell them to put in a help desk ticket so I can teach them the basic computer functionality they should have already known before being considered for employment. But I digress. So almost immediately, I get a ticket from new user that he can't open a spreadsheet. I go through the basics, i.e. any error messages, you don't have permission, file blocked, Excel not responding, yada yada. Nope. User just clicks the file, waits a few minutes, and nothing ever happens. I remote into user's computer and have them show me what's going on. I see the user open File Explorer, browse to directory, I see the mouse move over to a spreadsheet, I see the file highlight when clicked, and then nothing. Okay. I put a blank Excel file into that directory and tell the user to open it. Same thing, nothing happens. Have them copy the file to their desktop and try to open. Still nothing. Have the user open a Word doc in that directory. It works. Okay. Now I'm intrigued. Have the user launch Excel from the taskbar. Go to File, Open, and open the spreadsheet. That works. Now I'm befuddled. I open the file on my computer to make sure it's not corrupt in some way that would only affect how it's opened. Stranger things have happened. Check the user's permissions, file, directory, and account, even though I didn't think that would be the case since the file does actually open inside of Excel. SFC, DISM, repair office installation, all to no avail. Restored a previous version of the file from backup, nothing. I tell the user to go to lunch, and meanwhile I will uninstall and reinstall Office from scratch. User leaves and I hop on their computer. For shiggles, I give one last attempt to open this spreadsheet before I uninstall Office, and it works immediately. I'm dismayed, discouraged, and confused. But who am I to question when things randomly decide to work properly? It still hasn't occurred to me that I missed something vital. I notify new user that the problem is solved. A little while later, I get a response that it's not fixed. New user still can't open Excel files. What the actual F? Mad Googling ensues. Whilst I question all my life choices, I get another reply.
Hey, I fixed it. You can close my ticket out.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, I didn't know I had to double-click Excel files to open them. I've never used it before.
I'm now just starting to realize what was happening. What do you mean you didn't know to double-click?
Well, I've never used Excel before. When I open it from the taskbar, I just click it once. I thought that's how you open the files.
But I watched you open a Word doc.
Yeah, that's how I always open Word. I just double-click the file I need and Word opens. I didn't know Excel did that.
I summon my inner Tuvok. That is completely illogical. So all the times I told you to open a spreadsheet and was watching you, you just clicked on them once.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Head meet desk, desk meet head. I never actually considered that it would be possible that someone would be single-clicking a file instead of double-clicking it. And after I picked my jaw up off the floor, I couldn't believe I actually had to explain to a user that to open files they needed to be double-clicked. All files, for every program, all the time, for the past 30 plus fucking years. All in all, I learned a valuable lesson from this. No matter how long you've been shackled to the hell desk, no matter how much you think you know about everything, no matter how jaded you've become with stupid users over the years, never, ever overlook the absolute simplest, stupidest, mind-numbingly basic troubleshooting steps. Because users are fucking stupid, and you need to be able to think equally as fucking stupid. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Terrific Tales of Technology, number 15. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and comment, and share the video with all your friends and family. Those of your family who are not very tech savvy, you might need to get in the car, take the video to them, put it on a floppy disk or maybe a VHS. If you don't have a VHS, possibly a Betamax would also work. I hear those are still in use in some places. Right, where are we? This goes up on Tuesday. Yes, it is. And oof, we're in August already. Right, okay. I should probably start making plans for Christmas now, shouldn't I? This year has whooshed by quicker than I thought, but no, there we go. Alright, I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined me in chat during the recording streams when I've been making these videos. I've been using Freezer Cam, and it's gone down quite well so far, in spite of my, well, face. That's just self-deprecation, I don't really feel sorry for myself. And I'm having quite a good time with it, I must say. I'm glad I gave myself that little bit of a push. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.